so I'm just going to start out with a little story. I read an article from endslaverynow.org about a woman who was just recently divorced. She has 3 kids. She said she needed a break. She chose to trust a man that she went to high school with. Her husband knew, her family knew. It was just a little small town, probably just like many of us are from. Just think of some kid that you knew from high school, like someone you might not be that close with, but someone that you would confide in. She said she needed a break. She was driving him and a woman around when she soon realized that he was actually selling her. She was ordered to drive down a swampy back road when this man began beating this woman just to leave her there, just because she didn't make enough money that day. When he then made her drive to a hotel, making things turn for the worst. He created an ad on a website called Backpage.com, and when she tried to escape, he ended up raping her. He said, "Oh yeah, they're gonna like you because you're a pretty white girl." For the next 54 days, she was caught in a world of forced sex. The trafficker also forced her to smoke meth and branded her with a tattoo gun. She ended up addicted, much like any woman that was stuck in sex trafficking. And he forced her to... Whenever she would try to escape, the trafficker threatened to kidnap her 5-year-old daughter and sell her into sex trafficking also. She said, "So I trusted him, and he built up that trust, and he did things to make me feel comfortable and make me feel like he really cared about me." She ended up getting out of it, and he went to prison. But little small town story, it can happen to anyone.
So I was listening to a speaker this morning at like noon. There was a judge and a sheriff, and they both lived in Flint and like worked in that county. And so this police officer was talking about they set up a sting operation. Because these individuals don't work just like on Google, like they work in the dark web, so it's harder to find them and stuff like that. And so they had a female police officer who looked like really young, and so they said they put her on an ad as she was like 14, and then people would set up meetings and stuff to have sex with her, and the age range was anywhere from 28 to 70. And then so they brought in all of these individuals who set up a meeting, and once they got them, they took their phone. They got a search warrant and they searched through all their phones. And one individual who was 28, he had a 2-year-old daughter, and after looking through his phone, they found out that he had a bunch of child pornography, and he had been performing oral sex on his 2-year-old daughter and had pictures of it. And his girlfriend at the time had a 6-year-old daughter, and he also performed oral sex on her, and the girlfriend was allowing this to happen and taking pictures of it as well. Obviously this guy was put away, but the fact that this was happening is terrible, and this is like just another example of human trafficking.
So you might ask, what is sex trafficking? Like we just told you some examples of stories, but sex trafficking is a crime when women, men, and/or children are forcefully involved in commercial sex acts. The United States defends sex trafficking and defines it as the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, or obtaining of an individual under force, fraud, or coercion is induced to perform a commercial sex act. Adults and children can be trafficked or enslaved and forced to sell their bodies for sex. People are also trafficked or enslaved for labor exploitation. So basically, like, they can be sold to have kids for someone. When children have been trafficked and exploited, this is an offense, even if no force or threats have been used and the child has given consent.
So a little bit of background about sex trafficking. A lot of times those who are targeted for sex trafficking are indigenous people, poor people, and those who are economically and politically marginalized because they're easy targets. And what makes them easy targets is that they have a lack of rights. They have limited access to basic services, which all of this makes them vulnerable. And there are big organizations that are used as covers for sex trafficking, so it could be like just a little tiny drugstore or something like that, and in the back they have a whole operation for sex trafficking. The 3 elements that are involved in all sex trafficking rings, they have a process, a means, and a goal. And with without these, then it's hard to have an operation like this.
Some indicators of sex trafficking that you might not have thought of, just like signs that you can see in a person, are living with an employer, poor living conditions, multiple people in a cramped space, inability to speak to an individual alone. Answers appear to be scripted and rehearsed, so basically just like you ask someone a question and it's the same answer every single time, word for word. Like they just know what they're going to say, nothing ever changes. An employer is holding identity documents, they might not be able to provide like a birth certificate or something. Signs of physical abuse, submissive or fearful, underpaid or just paid very little, and under 18 in prostitution.
So trafficking also occurs through the internet. So traffickers will use ads on social media, dating sites, and online advertisements in order to lure in minors who are more susceptible to this. And websites have also implemented a screening formula, or whatever you want to call it, in order to screen these ads and prevent them from getting out into the public. However, it's hard to do because 10,000 to 16,000 listings and ads every day are coming up, and that's like a daunting task for anyone or a computer to sift through.
Just some effects on the individual. Like I said before, drug addiction's a big one. The case that I found was smoking meth, but a lot of the times it'll end up being like marijuana, just so the fact that like the female or the person being trafficked just like doesn't really know what's going on. They're not in as much pain and they're more like complying. They're not as resistant, I guess, to it. But there's also people can be charged as prostitutes in the criminal court just because cases go wrong. Sometimes the person who is doing the sex trafficking is a person that's like trusted in the government maybe, and of course they have lawyers on their side and they can get through that case. Long-lasting physical and psychological trauma, there's lots of PTSD involved with it. Big diseases such like HIV, AIDS, other STDs, STIs, malnutrition because they don't really get fed a lot, and social ostracism.
So there's a lot of preventions that you can do so this doesn't happen. Obviously report suspicions to law enforcement to prevent this from getting any further. Be an informed consumer. Make sure that you don't get involved with this, and if you do, obviously tell the authorities. Be informed and support anti-trafficking efforts in the community. Find out what local political representatives are doing to combat this. Host an awareness event, organize a fundraiser, be aware of traffickers targeting school-aged children, set up web alerts to provide for survivors.
So something that there is at Adrian College, there's a not-for-sale club on campus. Basically, it started with the chaplain's office, but it's a school-wide club. It's not really like broadcasted enough, but I found a lot about it, and I really thought it would be a good idea to share with us. They host a lot of events through the year, like bake sales, just to like raise funds to get the community involved with their campaign. They work to make Michigan's laws more effective against human trafficking, especially like you just heard like the cases in Adrian where someone almost got kidnapped in Meyer or Country Market. Like it happens here too, so they're making a difference there. They raised funds for a home in Thailand. It's a home for trafficking survivors that people just take them in, get them back on their feet, and kind of rescue them. They made presentations in Washington, D.C. in front of many government leaders and actual White House staff, and they're currently working on making fair trade items available on campus.
So first discussion question, how do you plan on combating human trafficking in your daily life?
It happens every day, but I think it's kind of uncomfortable that if you are noticing signs, like most people might be kind of scared to report it or something, but just stepping up and making sure to either call the authorities or even some type of adult or something that would be more likely to is important.
Like you can definitely, like this especially like at our age, like I know I had a friend that was like from around here, and like my friends and I kept an eye on her because we knew that she was susceptible to things like that. When I was in high school, my mom had a friend who was really big into like raising awareness for human trafficking, so like I knew the signs and stuff like since I was younger, so like keeping an eye out for it, especially now, like when someone's vulnerable like at our age, especially like when they're a freshman and they're new here and like they might not have any friends, like people are susceptible to it. And like if you do think that something's wrong with a place, like there used to be a spa over by the car dealership on 223, and my mom and I always told each other that we thought something was going on there, and it got busted for prostitution and human trafficking my senior year of high school. So like usually there's something in you saying that something's wrong, like there usually is.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, like, if I would go into like a main store or whatever, and boys like take what you would do, because I went to Meyer one night by myself, and there was like 4 older men like standing around my car, and I had to like stand in the store for an hour until a security guard had to go make them leave.
Mm-hmm.
They like followed me to the nearest McDonald's. It was a really scary night, so I don't go anywhere by myself anymore.
Yeah. So what would you do if you suspected someone of being a victim of sex trafficking?
Try and get them alone to like see if they actually are. Contact authorities.
Ask no questions, just call the authorities.
Yeah.
How would you prevent yourself from getting involved in human trafficking?
I think a big part of it is just being aware of what's going on around you, like knowing the signs, knowing how it happens,
Mm-hmm.
like just being informed, I guess, would probably be the best step towards knowing.
And like, know what's going on, and if someone's asking you to do something, you shouldn't just say no and get out of there as best you can.
I know, like, if I go someplace by myself, I always carry, like, a pocket knife, like, just in case. I see people with, like, pepper spray, like, just
Pepper
ways
spray.
to defend yourself.
Yeah, that-
I have my pepper spray in my keys all the time.
Like, you hold your keys like this. It's a good weapon.
Also, like, knowing the areas that you're going to.
Yeah.
Like, if you've never
Yeah.
been to this area. like,
If you're not comfortable, don't do it.
Yeah, and I'll tell everyone, like, right, because I'm from around here, don't go to Toledo by yourself.
No.
Yeah, never go to
Don't go
Toledo.
to Toledo, like, even with your girlfriends on the weekend nights. Like, my mom won't take my brothers and I are all 15 and older, and she won't take us there at night on the weekends because it's bad. Like, you just have to, like, I know I got a lot of crap for it, like, my freshman year, and my friends and I were hanging out, they're like, oh, like, you won't go, but I was like, no, it's not safe.
There's a
Like,
lot of
go
cases
places
in
not
Toledo,
safe.
yeah.
It's a huge area for that.
Mm-hmm.
There's like one night when we were like doing Christmas shopping, like me and my boyfriend were shopping for our moms, and it was like, it wasn't even that late, it was like 7:30, and it's just like a whole bunch of like police officers and security guards, and one of them had to pull me aside and like make sure that I actually like knew him. They made me pull the picture on my phone with me and him together.
It's good that they're doing their job, though.
Yeah.
So I have a
wasn't
question,
bad
though.
about it. It was just,
What is, did they explain what the dark web is? I don't understand that at all.
I don't know a whole lot about it, but it's like a.
I keep hearing about it, but-
It's like a.
I feel like
You
it's
can
always
buy,
been,
like-
been around, like you can
Yeah.
buy illegal things, talk to people illegally.
You can get like drugs. You can get obviously like prostitutes.
Buy
stuff
people.
Like that.
When you go online on a computer, like it traces your IP address unless you have like even if you do a bunch of stuff to it, like it's still gonna track your IP address even if you bounce it off different addresses. But when you like on the dark web, no one knows. Like it takes a lot more. Like
It's a lot
even
harder.
police can't track someone on the dark web, where like the FBI probably could.
But they
It's
know.
harder to track.
It's hard to track, yeah.
It's a lot less traceable and stuff like that.
So basically,
Which
they
is
can't
why
just
all
go
of
to
Well, I
a
was trying to
record of
picture what the
who
hell
bought
that
this
was.
and find a name and find out where they are. And, like,
It's effectively the modern black market
yeah.
Oh, okay.
for a comparison.
Like it's like I don't know if you guys have ever seen the Taken movies with Liam Neeson, but that has a lot to do with like human trafficking and stuff like that. And like his daughter was like got involved in that, and then she was like listed on the dark web for sale and all this stuff.
And I just want to put out there, like, it's not just girls being sold for sex. Like, guys get sold for sex. Guys get sold for, like, human labor. Like, it's human trafficking, too. It's not just sex trafficking. So.
Good presentation, thank you.